Hello crew. So this one is going to be very different. I'm sure you might have noticed it has been a very long time since we have done a good old-fashioned Q&A for this channel. We also hit an incredible milestone several months ago, 100,000 subscribers. I never in my wildest dreams ever imagined that this channel would ever hit that many people. That's crazy. I am so incredibly grateful to all of you for watching my videos, liking them, commenting, subscribing. Every kind of support, large or small, means the world to me. I feel so incredibly lucky that I get to make a living telling these incredible stories. I am a huge history nerd. I think that history is so incredibly cool because if you don't understand history, you don't understand the world. And so much of that history is shaped by the ships that carried it. So without further ado, let's answer your questions. First up, where do you find all your amazing footage? It's magical, thank you. Really transports you there. Love seeing all the clothes and haircuts from days past. The two main places that I get footage are Library of Congress and the National Archives. I am a huge nerd who spends a lot of my time, more time than any human should spend, just looking through archives and looking at old footage, and whenever I see something that's relevant to a video that I am making or might make, I save it. It's pretty amazing how much stuff is in there that's totally unlabeled. You can find beautiful footage of all kinds of vessels, especially stuff on the Great Lakes, warships, stuff like that. If I need something more specific, I'll license footage, usually from Pond 5. I used to get a lot of stuff from Getty, but they doubled their prices. So Getty Images is dead to me, thank you. But yeah, the main place I get footage is through archives and spending way too much time staring at old footage and when I should be having a life. What's more important, the oldness of the boat or the bigness of the boat? I'm gonna have to go with oldness, only because if we went bigness, we would have to celebrate the icon of the seas, and I just can't have that happen. Out of the many tragedies, disappearances, and sinkings that you've covered on your channel, which ones do you think are the most important in terms of what came afterward? So the two that immediately come to mind for me are the Lusitania and the Titanic. I've never directly covered either of those tragedies in like a dedicated video like the sinking of the Titanic or the sinking of the Lusitania, but cover them to some degree in various videos over the years. I've never done an actually dedicated video on either tragedy because there are so many channels that have covered these tragedies that I'm not really sure what I can add. That doesn't mean that I'll never make a video on them. You know, the Titanic is the reason why you're hearing my voice right now. So I'm clearly very interested in it. And you know, the Lusitania is also very fascinating to me as well. So one day there'll be a video on them, but there hasn't been, you know, one yet. But out of those two, obviously the Titanic is the one that comes to mind for everyone. You know, you can take a person who, you know, doesn't even know the difference between a ship and a boat, and ask them about a famous shipwreck and they'll immediately say the Titanic and, oh, it was the biggest ship in the world and it was such a tragedy and I can't believe Jack died and can you believe it? But to me, I think the Lusitania was actually the more influential tragedy between the two just because it was such an effective propaganda tool used to galvanize the American public against Germany during World War I. Many Americans did not want to have anything to do with World War I. It was Europe's war. They were pretty evenly split on which side they supported. There's a lot of German-American heritage in this country. But the story of the Lusitania and, you know, other ships that were sunk by U-boats became a really effective propaganda tool that really allowed the Allies to turn the American public in favor of Great Britain and Germany and eventually persuade them into supporting America's involvement in the war, which was pretty darn important. But if you take those two aside, the maritime tragedy that I think was most influential that I've covered is actually one that I think is almost totally forgotten, which is the RMS Republic. The RMS Republic was an intermediate White Star liner that sank a few years before the Titanic. And it was one of the first passenger liners that sank where wireless radio actually played a very big role in rescuing the survivors of the sinking. The Republic was kind of a special case where it took hours and hours and hours for the ship to sink, and her radio operator was very dedicated, and he was able to, help organize a rescue that saved every passenger, or nearly every passenger, on the ship. And it's a fascinating event because it's a perfect example of a tragedy where everyone learned all the wrong lessons from it. It was held up as an example of, the wonders of modern shipping, how safe ships are. Like, look at how safe modern shipping design is. It took hours and hours and hours for this ship to sink. And it had this amazing new invention, the wireless radio. So if you're on a ship and you run into trouble, you can call for help and another ship will speed to your rescue and everything will be great. And this is a widely known event, and so when people were thinking about shipping and safety, this is part of why people were so incredibly confident before the Titanic sank that shipping disasters were a thing of the past. We have these modern ships, they can't sink, and if they do sink, it'll take hours and hours and hours, and they can call for help, and we don't have to worry about the disasters of the past. It's also part of why the Titanic event was so incredibly shocking. People didn't think stuff like this could happen anymore, and then it did. So I definitely think the Republic is a pretty important maritime tragedy that a lot of people don't think about. So if you're interested, check out the video I made on it. I think it's kind of a sleeper hit that a lot of people should check out. Is there a reason you haven't covered the Fitzgerald? Too many videos out there where you don't feel like another video would add anything to make it worth the effort, or waiting for the 50th anniversary next year? I mean, you pretty much nail it here. It's the same reason why I don't have the Titanic tragedy video. There's so many videos out there covering the Fitzgerald tragedy, and a lot of them are really, really good. Immediately my mind goes to the video that Ask a Mortician did a few years ago. I love that video. She does such a good job talking about the human toll of the tragedy and the effect it had on the community and the families of the victims. I don't really know how I could top that. But that doesn't mean I'll never make a video on it. I think you very rightly point out that next year will probably be a good year for Fitzgerald content. So while I probably won't make the Edmund Fitzgerald tragedy video, I probably will at some point find some aspect of the tragedy that I will cover. And next year seems like a good time to do it. If someone handed you an all expenses paid ticket for a week's trip to anywhere, where would you go and why? So I really want to go to Japan. I think it's a, really fascinating place, just culturally, historically. It's also just naturally very beautiful. So if anyone is looking to hand out an all expenses paid ticket for somewhere, hello, let's do Japan. Is this your day job? If not, what is your profession? So this is indeed my day job and my profession. I feel incredibly lucky and fortunate that I've been able to do this full time for a little over 2 years now, and that is because of all of you watching and liking and commenting and subscribing and watching my ads or skipping through them. I don't judge, but that is what allows me to devote all of my time to making these stories, and I feel incredibly grateful that I am able to do that. And I owe a huge thank you to everyone watching this video and everyone who has ever watched any of my videos. I feel very lucky that I have an incredibly supportive community of people who seem to like what I do, and that allows me to be able to keep doing it. What's your favorite aircraft? The Lockheed L-1011 TriStar. If you were to describe yourself with a type of muffin, what muffin would it be? Carrot. I don't know why. If the SS United States is turned into an artificial reef, then can you do a story about the ship? Your videos are always great, and I hope you'll get to 1 million subs soon. I also hope that as well. So I got a few questions about the current situation with the SS United States, the plans to turn her into an artificial reef, and whether or not I would cover the ship in a video. So one thing, SS United States is a very hard phrase for me to say with my list. It sucks, but I just know that the comment section of that video will be brutal. But that's not the main reason I haven't made a video about the SS United States. The main reason I haven't made a video is because, like the Titanic and a few other ships, there are just a lot of videos about the SS United States. There are a lot of creators who have had the opportunity to do video tours of the ship and what she looks like now. I would love to do my own version of that video, but unfortunately I've just haven't had the opportunity to do that. I'm not really, my comfort zone is behind the desk, behind the computer, behind the microphone, behind the camera. No camera is my comfort zone. So I haven't really tackled any video where I actually go out and visit a ship. That being said, in 2025, one of my goals for my channel and my Patreon more specifically is to start doing, IRL videos, getting to tour some of these historic ships that we are lucky enough to still have with us. How exactly I'm going to do that, how I'm going to tackle it, how I'm going to approach these videos, I don't really know yet, but that is very much something that I want to start doing. Unfortunately, with the SS United States, it looks like the time has come to an end on my opportunity to do that. I'm not exactly sure when she is going to be moved, but I believe it's in the next few months. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like I will be able to do anything filming in real, actually filming on the SS United States, unless something amazing comes together very quickly, which that would be great. If you were someone who can make that happen, hello, say hi. That being said, I definitely plan on making a video about the SS United States. It's funny because I think the SS United States has been on my list of videos to make pretty much since day one. I was actually gonna make a video about the SS United States, I think like 3rd or 4th in my list of videos when I first started the channel. And I always delayed it because I was like, oh, well, this is one of those ships that still exists, and it's only 100 or so miles away from where I live. So if I'm going to cover the SS United States, I want to really cover the SS United States and get out there and see her and do a video on her and etc., etc. So obviously that opportunity never happened, but that's kind of why I kept kicking the can and kicking the can and kicking the can. Now, the situation's different. We will not have a ship to film on soon, unless I go underwater, which honestly could be pretty cool in its own right. And in terms of my thoughts on turning her into an artificial reef, I mean, I don't know. Is it an idea? Is it the fate that I would, if I could choose anything, that I would choose for her? Of course not. And I don't think anyone involved with trying to save her feels that way either. There was a many decades long effort to try and save the ship and try and restore her and try and repurpose her. But I think with the current state of the ship, the cost of restoring her or converting her into any other purpose would have been incredibly high. And so there are very few organizations or people in the world who are willing to put up that kind of money. It would almost certainly have to be a passion project, because it's very doubtful that even if they did a wonderful restoration and found an amazing new use for the ship, it's very hard to imagine that even with all that said, the project would end up being profitable. And unfortunately, the way the world works, things have got to be profitable, otherwise they don't happen. And I think there was also just a lot of issues in finding a permanent home for her. I don't know anything that you guys don't know. I am also an outsider who is just, observing from afar and hoping for the best. But as I understand it, a lot of the potential homes for her, like New York City and, other big cities, there just wasn't a lot of local support for doing such an ambitious project, which is unfortunate. I can envision a really incredible new life for the ship in New York City, and I think that with her legacy, her current status as the fastest passenger liner ever created, I think there's just a ton of potential for what they could have done with that. But I don't have several $100 million or $1 billion or whatever it would have taken to do that. So I really empathize with the Conservancy and everyone who is tasked with trying to find a way to save her. And it sounds like, they have been pushed into a position where they had to either scrap her or go with the option that was chosen, which, while that sucks, I would rather her be an artificial reef that people can dive on and take pictures of and enjoy, instead of turning her into, razor blades and soup cans. So that's how I feel about it. I think it's an unfortunate situation, but I am also an adult who understands that, unfortunately, this is just kind of what happens, especially in a society that doesn't really value history and doesn't put a lot of importance on preserving history. It is what it is. But yes, you can look forward to a banging Big Old Boats SS United States video in the future. How/when did you first become interested in ships? I think like pretty much every other 90s kid, I watched James Cameron's Titanic and was immediately enamored with both filmmaking and also the Titanic. When I was a kid, I wanted to know everything about the Titanic. I thought it was the coolest thing on the planet. I bought a million books about it. I read everything I could about it. I was just completely enamored with it. So that movie really inspired me to, want to be a filmmaker, and also made me really interested in big old boats. Favorite car? I'm pretty basic when it comes to cars. My two favorites are the Ford Bronco and a Porsche 911. Sorry. But I also live in New York City, so I currently drive nothing. Which of the Ballin trio is your favorite? I'm going to have to agree with you and also go with Bismarck/Majestic. I absolutely love the Ballin trio. I feel like they're underappreciated. They were also completely riddled with issues that I think they mostly worked out by the time they got to the Bismarck. So that's what makes her my favorite. Big, beautiful, a little bit weird. Perfect. What's your favorite ocean liner era? I'm torn between the pre-World War I Edwardian liners like Lusitania and Titanic and Olympic, and then the 1920s and 1930s liners like Bremen, Queen Mary, Normandie. I think if I absolutely had to choose, I would probably go with the 1920s and 30s. I think that's when ocean liners really hit their peak. By then, they really knew what they were doing. It was before air travel actually started to become a thing and started threatening ships, and designers got all obsessed with modernity and trying to create something that would compete with jetliners. The pre-World War II liners were just perfect in my eyes. I also love them because they would never build anything like that again. They're completely ridiculous death traps. Everything's made out of wood. Those things go up in flames so easily. It's astounding. But they're also absolutely beautiful. It's one of the last periods when I think people really valued a certain kind of craftsmanship when it came to interiors. After the war, everything is, asbestos and fire control and plastic and aluminum and streamlined and all that stuff, which is, don't get me wrong, very, very cool in its own right, and also insane in its own right. But yeah, the peak is the 1920s and 30s. You can't top that. I'm going to combine Totally Wazowski's two questions because they're kind of following the same idea. Do you think the SS Normandy would have had a similar career to the Queen Mary if she survived? And do you think the SS France would have been built if the SS Normandy survived the war? So first one, I do think the Normandy would have had a pretty similar career to the Queen Mary, and I also think that she would still be around today. The French took enormous pride in that ship. It was basically a floating art museum. It was envisioned to be everything, the best of what the French had to offer. So I could very easily see it being turned into a floating hotel or something similar to what the Queen Mary is today, but over in France. Do I think the SS France would have been built if the Normandy survived the war? Yeah, I think so. I mean, by the 1960s, the Normandy, even if she did survive, she would have been incredibly outdated, the same way that the Queen Mary was extremely outdated by the 60s. So the same way the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth were essentially replaced by the QE2, I think a ship very similar to the SS France would have been constructed to replace the Normandy. And the French line had the Liberté and the Ile-de-France, which were very successful, popular ships in the post-war era. So it's not like the French line was completely lost and had nothing post-war. They ended up, even though they lost the Normandy, they ended up, coming out okay. Would they have preferred to keep the Normandy? Hell yeah. And would she still be around today? Hell yeah. So, thank you, United States Navy. You're great. Where do you see your channel going / plans in 2025? I really want to focus on growing the channel as much as possible in 2025. The last 3-ish years, the channel has grown at a very kind of even, steady pace, which, let me be clear, I'm not mad about. I could never imagine how successful this channel was going to be when I created it in February 2021. But I am really eager to push the channel to the next level. As you probably know, to this day, I do everything. I write, I research, I edit, I record, I produce, I find the footage, I do everything. Which makes weekly uploads very hard, but I've got a system and I am trying to stick to that system. So weekly uploads are very much a priority. I might miss a week here and there. I'm human. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please, 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 please. But it is abundantly clear to me that the YouTube gods, at least for the time being, want weekly uploads. So that is what I will give the YouTube gods, even if it kills me. Some of my other plans, I am starting to publish my videos on Spotify. I am looking for ways to branch out to other platforms, see if I can be successful there, and not be so completely reliable on YouTube, because as you know, sometimes YouTube can be fickle. I don't really love having all my eggs in one basket. Along with that, I'm working on building out the Patreon. Everyone who supports me there is so amazing, and I want to be giving more than I am currently giving. So more Patreon exclusive videos, and more, cool content that will make that extra step even more worth it. And the final thing that I'm looking to do for the channel is expand to new topics. Don't worry, I'm not going to go crazy and start covering like really out there things, but to me, as long as it's related to ships, it is fair game. So that's why recently you saw my video on the Smalls Lighthouse. I have always loved lighthouses. And I kind of on a whim just decided, hey, what would happen if I made a video on a lighthouse? And fortunately, you guys seem to really like that video. So I am looking to make more videos like that and, just branch out to other topics. The other thing I really, really want to do is I want to start doing more real life videos. So touring ships, traveling a little bit more. Not exactly sure at the moment what that's going to look like, but making these videos from my bedroom is getting pretty stale. So I would love to start sharing more of the real world with you guys. So that is what you have to look forward to in 2025. If you could have any role on the crew of any historical ship and live to tell your tale, what role on what ship? So this is maybe a dark / nerdy answer, but I mean, we are all nerds here, so welcome. I think it would be really interesting to be one of the quartermasters on the Titanic. Several of the quartermasters ended up being assigned to the lifeboats, and so a lot of them survived that night, and that's how we have a lot of the first-hand knowledge of what exactly happened, which I think is pretty cool. Which Great Lakes vessel will you cover next? Tentatively, next on the list is the James B. Colgate. Is there a ship you really wanted to cover but couldn't for whatever reason? So, yes and no. There are ships like the Lusitania and the Titanic that I would love to make more videos about, but those are already so well covered that, again, I don't really know what I'd have to say. Another liner that I'd really love to cover is the Aquitania. It's been a little bit hard because in the last year, ocean liner videos have not been performing as well as other videos, so I've kind of had to put some of my ocean liner video ideas on hold for a little bit. I think now that I am increasing production and doing weekly videos, it should be easier to do videos like that. When you were doing what I was doing before, which was only doing 1 or 2 videos a month, it really puts an emphasis on all the videos that they have to perform really well, otherwise I am a little bit screwed. But when you're doing weekly videos, if a certain video just happens to not perform as much, there's just less pressure on every single video to be a banger. So I think I'll be able to finally get my Aquitania video. So be on the lookout for that in 2025. Of all the missing ships, which one would you most like to be found? Gotta be the Waratah. You know, I've covered probably a dozen ships that have gone missing and not been found at this point, and almost every single one of those stories, you can be pretty darn certain what happened to that ship. There was a storm, there was, something that makes it pretty clear what happened. With the Waratah, there are a bunch of theories, but really, no one has any idea even where that ship went down. So I would very much love for the Waratah to be found and to finally know what happened to her. Also, if you're curious, check out that video. That is one of my all-time favorite videos that I've ever made for the channel. Thank you for your work. Your voices put me to sleep when I wasn't able to, so thank you. As a fellow insomniac, I absolutely love hearing that. My question is, when did you become interested in YouTube and sharing the history of boats? So for me, this came during the pandemic. I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I was absolutely hating the job that I was doing at the time, and so I ended up returning to a lot of old passions, and one of those was ocean liners. So I started watching a bunch of videos about Titanic and reading a lot about her. And at the time I was working content marketing, working with companies to ironically create YouTube videos. And the idea popped in my head that like, hey, I am really interested in this and I like YouTube and I like making videos. Maybe I should give this a try. So I put together a video on the Queen Elizabeth. It is still a banger video, even though the audio is trash, but check it out if you want. And really the rest was history. And the last one, you were given the ability to travel back in time to visit one ship on any day for a single day. You may take a camera with you, but the camera has to be correct to the time period of your visit. What ship and what day do you choose? For this one, I'm going to pull a good old-fashioned Father Brown and go visit the Titanic while she was in Cherbourg. Only difference, I would take way more photos. Alright, I think that's enough for now. Please let me know if you like videos like this and if you want me to make them more often. If you made it to the end, let me know in the comments what your favorite ship is, and thank you again so much for supporting the channel. I am so excited for 2025 and all the incredible stories that we are going to be sharing on this channel. But until then, be nice to people.